Hello, and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle, our weekly discussion show where we talk about all things horse racing. Um, First thing is, as usual, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, I don't know why you haven't yet, so please do, and definitely click the little like button on YouTube if you haven't previously, because we could do it a lot more numbers of likes on the show. So I'm told by our production team. Now, starting off, we've got Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward here with me as usual, and we're going to go through everything that happened in the last week. But maybe first off, just to mention, after last week, we talked about the sad passing of Kevin Prendergast, one of the great trainers in Ireland. In the last few days, then we've had Barry Hills and D. Wayne Lucas, two more legends of the sport, both passed away. Barry Hills was 88, D. Wayne Lucas 89. Barry Hills trained over 3,000 winners, including he had a Prix de l'Arc winner, Ryan Gold, some people might remember, 1973. And he also won the Irish Derby with Sir Harry Lewis, 1987. And D. Wayne Lucas, sure, he was an absolute legend. 4 Kentucky Derby wins, 15 Triple Crown races he won, and 20 Breeders' Cup races. I think he's only matched by Aidan O'Brien in those stats. Um, what about those, Johnny? Did you know much about either of them, or were they before your time? I know they were definitely before Emma's time, mainly their prime was at least.
Yeah, they were before my time, Vinny, but the amazing thing about horse racing is that you can train winners well into your 90s like Kevin Prendergast did, and may Kevin rest in peace. And, Barry Hills was very much in his pomp when I was kind of getting into racing, and obviously would have been aware of Dean Wayne Lucas as well. I think, the context of the three deaths, I suppose, is that they lived very full lives and got to, got to a great age in the end. And I'm sure there was a great celebration of Kevin Prendergast life as well for his passing. I'd just come from the funeral of Hugh Mulrine, and it was lovely to hear Dennis Hogan and speak and give a prayer to the faithful. And I saw other horse racing trainers, the likes of Aidan McGuinness there as well. And just down in Galway today, there's a big sense here in Castlegar of a loss of a fellow who really loved horses. So I suppose context of him passing in his mid-20s, it puts it into a totally different context. But Barry Hills, like what a legacy he has from his sons down, and a massive operator for Shadwell down the years. But just thinking of Hugh today after his funeral.
Very good. May they all rest in peace. Anyway, we shall move on now to Derby weekend. That was the big thing that we've got to talk about. 3 long days of it. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You were there on the Friday, Emma, were you?
I was there on the Saturday, during the Saturday for the Pretty Potty. It was very Cara Gap Day in fairness, and good attendance. I thought we just got the figures through there. Johnny got them. I think 6,900 on the Saturday. No, it did feel a lot busier than that. I was a bit surprised it wasn't a little bit higher, but in fairness, I met a few people there, and everyone kind of seemed to say the same thing. It was kind of the best atmosphere I've kind of experienced at the Curragh for a long, long time. A great buzz around the place. I'd say everyone who was there was enjoying themselves. A brilliant card on Saturday, and then Sunday's card was, I suppose, a bit of a topic of debate, and with a lot of handicaps footing the card, I suppose. But I'd imagine like anyone who went to the Co over the weekend had a great time. It kind of seemed to be the general consensus. And I think was it around 11 or 12,000 there for the Derby on the Sunday as well, which it's slightly improving, I suppose, on what they've had before, but maybe still not what you'd expect for a flagship meeting like that.
Yeah, just going through those figures, which Brian Kavanagh sent through to Johnny there earlier on today. There was 5,028 on Friday night, 6,910 on Saturday, and 11,200 on Derby Day. The official figure last year for Derby Day was 11,418, so 218 less than last year, but it is up on some of the previous years in the recent past, at least. So positive enough, Johnny. I think the weather helped yesterday as well. It certainly looked great on TV. I wasn't there myself, but I must say it looked great with seeing the sun shining at a race in the Curragh is something we don't often see. So that was a real blessing for them. And the crowd did enjoy themselves. I know a few people who were there yesterday and some others who were there on Friday as well, and they all had a great time. What do you make of it, Johnny?
There are a couple of things here. I wasn't at the Curragh over the weekend. I was in Cork Park yesterday. I would have gone to the Derby otherwise. And so I don't like commenting on a racetrack when I can get in as a complimentary press member. I don't even have to pay, and I wasn't there. So far be it for me to be pontificating about race course that I don't go to. But I the comments I made about Leopardstown, which your website turned into a story last week, definitely got a lot of reaction, and I still feel that the Irish flat scene and has a lot more to offer than the crowds that come in. And the crowds that we got here, less than 12,000 for the Derby. Like these aren't attendances that should be acceptable, and we have a long, long way to go to get the Curragh back to where it should be. But Before we get into the nature of the 9 race card with all the handicaps yesterday, which is a sort of a cold commercial decision maybe made by the racetrack. I was interested to read David Jennings' article in the Racing Post where he spoke about the effort that Robbie Irwin was doing to get people up on stage to give interviews throughout the card. I think this is a massive thing racetracks don't do enough of. I think the guy in the parade ring or the woman in the parade ring should be doing lots of interviews to make you feel that there is a benefit from going racing. But speaking to Emma and speaking from other people who were there, even though 7,000 wasn't a big crowd on Saturday, it felt like there was a good buzz. And I loved watching on racing TV at home. Just to see I could see all of the people in the parade, the amount of people that were there. There was great analysis of the race afterwards. And the racing was just so good on the Saturday. It was class to watch. And I think the Curragh have to work from this and build this crowd up. But I would make this point, and we spoke about the white elephant that was the money spent at the Curragh. The money that was spent at the Curragh, if they tried to do the same thing tomorrow, it'd probably cost something like double. So let's look at the positive that the race course has been redeveloped. Aidan O'Brien's comments were quite extraordinary. I think there was a big reaction, negative and positive to it. But let's build on the quality of our flat product and take the positives from the weekend. I'm looking forward to going to Curragh for Champion weekend. I'm going to be in Bellewstown this week, and it's a completely different atmosphere. And you'll see that the crowds there will be well up there with the average day of the Curragh. The Curragh still has an awful long way to go. But I'm delighted to hear that there was positive feedback about this weekend, because I think it's a terrific facility. I love going there. It's a long way to go, but I would slightly agree with Aidan O'Brien in the sense that there is an awful lot of negativity when we should be positive about what we have as well.
Okay, we might discuss that in a little more detail later on, because I wouldn't be so much in that camp, to be honest with you. The first thing is, let's look at the racing, I suppose, from last weekend. Saturday was the big day numerically for good racing. So we had the likes of Dorset, then we had Beautify beating Lady Iman. I don't know what you thought of that one, Emma. Like, there was a lot of money for Beautify, a maiden going against Lady Iman. I thought Lady Iman was something special from the previous runs. I was a little bit disappointed. Having said that, Ryan Moore, I thought, gave Beautify a fantastic ride from the front as well, which probably stole it to some extent. Then you had Susie Songs, which was Colin Keane getting his own back then on Flushing Meadows, short heading that one. Trust Your Instincts winning as well. Quirl against Calpana. Cracking day. It really was a very, very good day's racing.
Oh, it was like a brilliant card. Like, you can probably say a little bit about the other 2 days across the weekend, but I don't think anyone could really take away from Saturday's card at the Curragh. Like, from kind of start to finish, it was just really exciting action. Kind of started off with a really good 2-year-old maiden, and Dorset was really impressive there. Then, like you said, onto the 2-year-old races, some good winners. Trust Your Instincts was very good, but the Pretty Polly was definitely the massive highlight of I'd say the whole weekend. It was the best race. We saw that the big two taking each other on Calpana and Whirl obviously coming back from a valiant effort in the Oaks at Epsom, and God, I thought she was brilliant. Like, it was a race they went hard from the start, and they seemed to keep just picking up, and you saw the horses maybe finishing in behind just weren't able to go that gallop they set. And it was actually interesting as well. There was a photographer down just as they're coming up towards the finish. Whirl kind of jinks out and goes towards Calpana, so you'd wonder how much Whirl had left. I'd say she was even idling a small bit coming to the finish. The fact that she was able to jink at a photographer in a finish like that, it was a brilliant race. And yeah, the 2-year-olds, Lady Iman, like you mentioned, you kind of maybe wonder, would they be thinking about dropping back to the 5 furlongs now? She looks like a filly, like you said, she was really, really good in her first couple of starts, and I'd say she's just a real speedball. Maybe dropping back to 5 furlongs might suit her a bit better now, but like you said, Beautify was really impressive. And I'd say, like, across the whole card on the Saturday, we saw loads and loads of quality. Trying to pick a horse to follow towards the end of it will be like, you could pick any kind of one of them, because those first few races all the way up to the Pretty Polly was just class viewing, really. And I think that helped the atmosphere at the Curragh as well, because when you got races like that, the crowd can get behind it and get excited. You saw, like, around the parade ring, maybe something that you wouldn't see too often out there. Maybe the weather probably helped as well, but like, there was a big gathering outside. People were getting a buzz, getting to see these kind of good quality horses running there. And yeah, look, I thought Saturday was probably as good a day as I've had at the Curragh in a long time. Brilliant racing from start to finish, and no letdown, really.
And isn't it hard to compare? Isn't it hard to compare that to the jumps at the moment? For if you go to an Irish jumps meeting, I find it hard to get anything like as excited. But the quality, the finishes, how competitive it is, how top class it is. Like the flat in Ireland has a lot more to offer than national hunt racing for me at the moment in terms of its competitiveness and the quality of the curragh and the 2-year-olds that you get on Saturday.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you'll get like some of the best 2-year-olds in the world, some of the best horses in the world. Like you see, like I mean, you've got obviously the Coolmore contingent, and plus others like Ger Lyons and Dermot Will. Like they all hold their own internationally, and we're getting to see them all slashing there in the curragh. You throw in a few English challengers then as well as just kind of brilliant spectacle. And like you said, it makes it a bit different. Like it is a bit different to the national hunt, I suppose, because it's kind of a bit more dominated, kind of from one or two big stables, whereas on the flat there's a more variety, and it's just really, really competitive in those types of races for the most part, anyway. And we saw it in Saturday's card. I mean, you couldn't fault it. Kind of similar to Guinea's weekend, I thought. The quality of the race in the Thur that over that weekend was brilliant as well. And look, I think like you were saying, you mentioned Aidan O'Brien's interview. You kind of have to take the positives from the weekend as well. Like there was some cracking racing, but maybe there was just a little bit too much racing as well, as what I would say. Like having 8-9 race cards is a little bit of an overkill across 3 days. It makes it tough. Like it makes it tough for a race course to draw big crowds. We are trying to maybe fill a card. You're obviously trying to satisfy your whirlpool commitments and stuff like that. But like what I'd be thinking, why don't you maybe push the Derby back a few weeks, join it up with Oaks weekend, have like a jam-packed weekend of top-class action, and then it would be very interesting to see what the crowd figures would be like, because we saw with the quality of racing, the atmosphere was there in the Curragh, and it would probably attract more kind of international race course as well, I'd imagine, like if it was more of a jam-packed, like high-quality action, rather than filling it up with handicaps, which could be run on other days. Realistically, they don't really probably have to be on the Derby weekend card.
Yeah, the other thing to take into account here, I suppose, when you look at those crowds for the Curragh on the 3 days, there are probably three separate groups of people that went on the 3 days. You've got the people who go on the Friday night is a knees up for the locals and bands playing and all that sort of stuff. So that's one set of people. Then the Saturday, really good racing. You probably got a lot of real racing fans and purists for the sport who went to see some really top class horses run. And then Sunday for Derby, well, that's a different set altogether to come along for that, isn't it? I don't know what sort of people they are who tend to go to that, but they would tend to be a different type of people. They're there drinking their champagne or whatever on the big day is the bulk of what goes to those sort of big events. So it's not like at Cheltenham where you've got a set of people who go for all 4 days or could be there on any of the 4 days. I think the people who go Derby, they were never going to go Friday night, were they, for a knees up with a band down the end of the stand. That's not what they're into. So I think you probably have three different sets of people. So you're trying to cater for that as well to some extent. But anyway, we'll move on to Sunday's big race, the Derby. It was a hell of a lineup on paper. The first three from Epsom turning up. I can't remember the first three from Epsom turning up in recent years anyway. What about you, Johnny? What did you make of that race?
Yeah, it was funny because I thought the Derby itself was a bit kind of meh, and as a consequence, even though the first three from Epsom and then also ran who was well fancied at Epsom were running the Irish Derby, it didn't really excite me per se as a race. But I was very interested to see would Lambourne back it up. And Aidan O'Brien, I think, spoke about Australia as well very passionately afterwards to see if Australia, was at a brave one of them late, could provide another classic winner. He's obviously had very few of them. And Lambourne did the job. And I think John Magner lumping on the Whirlpool as well. John Magner's been in the news a lot lately. I thought that was an interesting aspect of his interview with David Jennings, supporting the Whirlpool, which is something you shouldn't underestimate, trying to have a bet, by the way, on these big days. But he had to tough it out. But I don't know, I was nearly drawn as much to the runner-up, and the run that Wootton Bassett has had over the last few weeks, like another extraordinary result for him to have a long shot finish second in the Derby after Whirl. He's getting all manner of winners at the moment, and you see when Coolmore put gambles on sires how it can backfire. It really did throw its whole, I'm sure, I don't have the figure, the amount of Galileo bred mares that were across to Wootton Bassett, I'd say, is massive, and they are really reaping the benefits now. This is the first year where we're really seeing the result of it. It was a good performance by Lambourne. I still think if he went to stud now, he'd probably be 10 or 15 grand. I think that's where this set of middle distance horses maybe are at, and maybe I'm wrong on that. But for me, it was a race that showed his toughness and the fact that he probably wants a mile and 6 ideally, but also showed for me where Wootton Bassett is getting as a sire with the serious contender.
Yeah, the other thing there to take note of as well is, like, in advance of the Derby, you see the first three come up from Epsom, as you say. There was that Prince of Aris, and also ran in Epsom, who had been fancied for that race. And then Aidan puts a handful of horses in, and you think they're all going to be pacemakers, and it's all about the pace. And yet their own horse makes most of the running himself with the other horse. It's like, I just thought it was a funny race in that sense. It wasn't what I was expecting to see. I didn't think that Ryan Moore would have made as much use of Lambourne with the pace with the other horses in there who were seemingly going to be pacemakers, but it turned out they weren't. The other thing I thought, that Lazy Griff, is it the one that finished third, had finished second in Epsom. I thought that was some performance. If you watch it again, the horse was going nowhere at any stage, and I think he was almost last with about a furlong and a half to run. So to come home third was a fair performance there. He looks nailed on for a run in the Ledger or something over a longer trip, maybe later in the season. What did you make of the Derby yourself, Emma?
Yeah, I suppose kind of similar to Johnny, coming into it, even though you had the 1, 2, 3 from Epsom, like the maybe wasn't a massive wow factor, but like, to be fair, it's hard to take away from the horse Lambourne. I thought, it was a gritty, tough performance. He's not a flashy horse. I suppose we knew that even after he won the Derby in Epsom. They went to fair lick, and like you said, there was plenty of options there to maybe set up a bit of a pace for him. But I suppose if it's not broke, don't fix it. They kind of stuck to the same tactics again. They went to fair lick, and yeah, he came home strongly. You'd imagine, like, if I don't know, they're talking about King George, but like, he'd probably the odds on for a Ledger, wouldn't he? Like, he kind of just seems like that kind of a horse. I'd say he'll stay all day long, and um, yeah, look, it was a good race. I enjoyed watching it, and sometimes it can be hard for maybe a horse coming into, like, I saw someone had stats out about maybe Aidan's Epsom Derby winners who kind of came into the race with a lower profile and won the race off a lower mark, and they can find it a little bit harder when they go back to try and do the Derby in the Curragh then as well. But in fairness, Lambourne, he looks rock solid, and yeah, look, if he shows up in a Ledger, I'd imagine there isn't a whole pile that will beat him. He looks a fair sturdy horse, in fairness to him.
Yeah, but it just kind of shows. Yeah, it just shows the Curragh, like the Epsom and the Curragh are literally like comparing us. Bayoustown and the Curragh. It's a completely different track where, like, at the Curragh, you can see a horse would go and he basically have no excuses. And you Ryan Moore to ride, as you say, like he rode at a track where there was a bit of a front pulling bias the weekend, but he rode him hard from the front. And it's to me, it's a much more genuine test for a horse to win at the Curragh than at Epsom.
Yeah, fair enough. I'd agree with that. Anyway, we'll move on to the other big talking point of the weekend, or it certainly was for me anyway. And I wrote about it in my blog if someone wants to read it at some stages on the website. It's about the watering down of the main card on Irish Derby Day. So first of all, we'd 9 races, and it turned out 6 of them were handicaps. The Derby was the only group race that was on the card as well. So basically a load of run of the mill races, and the Derby stuck in the middle of it. The basic reason for that seems to be it's to do with this tote whirlpool that Johnny mentioned, which is now the whole day. Every race at the Curragh on Derby Day is now part of the whirlpool. So people from all around the world can bet into it. Most of them, it turns out, are from Hong Kong, because they're the ones who instigate this whole thing. They run the whole show. And they're the ones who basically, I'm presuming, got the railway stakes taken out of the traditional position on the Derby card, and is now going to be run on the Oaks card next month, because it doesn't have enough runners. Those group races, that's why they were all concertinaed into Saturday, I'm presuming as well, is because they don't have enough runners for the World Pool. They want to see double figure fields, preferably like they have in Sha Tin and Happy Valley. 14 runners a race is what they're looking for. That's what their audience wants out in the Far East, and that's what they want for our Irish Derby Day. Is that good enough, Johnny?
So I'm just reminded of I'm trying to look at the Barcelona cleric. I'm not going to find it now, but I've had a major problem with the way football, I think, the sport that's probably dearest to my heart, is destroying itself in terms of so much stuff on TV. Like TV, every game is on TV now, and it's just relentless, and this ridiculous Sub World Cup. And a Barcelona player basically said it feels like football is content now. It's actually content for people watching on TV. This was the card, I think, of all race cards, this was the card that showed who our overlords are in Irish racing. And it is not the people who are paying in, just like it's not the people going to Anfield with them anymore for a Liverpool match. It's the people who are watching on the box and paying their Sky subscription. And in this case, in racing, the money that the racetracks are making is from media rights money. And in this instance, if you're lucky enough, the World Pool, which is worth a lot of money for the Curragh. Now, I can absolutely see why this card, not 9 races I don't mind too much. You're not absolutely, like, you're not under obligation to stay for the entire race day. If you want to go home a race early, that's fine. But to have no group race as well as the Derby for me is a very, very unusual look. It's a really unusual look. Now, if we had Brian Kavanagh on this morning, he would say it was literally a commercial decision where the money is just too much to turn down. And I can absolutely see that. Let's not forget here, the Curragh is in serious financial trouble or serious financial pressure since the redevelopment. It's been a very difficult sell for people. And as much as I completely guess that this is not a good look for a car, we have a lot of, I wouldn't say run-of-the-mill races, very good handicaps, but no group races, handicaps that encourage turnover. It's not a great look, Vinny, but ultimately this is where we're at. And this is why racecourses in the future are under serious pressure, because the racecourse deal that they have arranged, the last group rights deal, is turnover per racecourse dictates your future. And some racecourses, as far as I'm aware, are going to be under pressure and may possibly close because they're so tied in with media rights money now. And in this instance, the Whirlpool. I mean, I call it was a bad look for Derby Day. But at the same time, if you put my commercial hat on, whether Brian Kavanagh gave away free tickets yesterday, he wasn't going to get anywhere near the amount of money they got from the Whirlpool in Hong Kong. And that's the cold commercial reality of it.
Yeah, the Curragh themselves, I've no issue with them doing what they did, because it looks like they're going to get north of 600,000 in media rights just for Derby Day alone. That's in addition to what they already get from the racing TV deals and everything else. This is straight coming from Hong Kong through all the commingling countries coming into the pool. They get about 600,000, maybe a little bit more than that, depends on who ended up watching it in the end and what sort of numbers it did financially. But basically, it's a big chunk of money. So I can see why the Curragh would do that. I have no issue with them wanting to, or at least trying to do that. But the issue I have is this is one of our flagship events of the year. This is a major way to promote the sport, particularly flat racing in Ireland, which doesn't get too many look-ins. It's all about your Punchestowns and all the other major events that we have in the jump season, including Cheltenham. But from a flat point of view, this is our showpiece. This is the one we want to show the world. We want the people who come to the Curragh to have a fabulous day and remember it because they saw some fantastic racing, like we talked about on Saturday. But they didn't get that on Sunday. They just got one big race. I think horse racing in Ireland has an obligation here to rein in courses like the Curragh who want to do things from a commercial point of view, where, not all the time, and I don't mind them doing whatever. If you had a Wexford or a Thurles has to put on a certain card to increase their financial rights and keep themselves viable, I've no issue with that. But these are heritage meetings like Derby Day at the Curragh. This is a different thing. This is very important for the sport, and it has to be a case, I think, that horse racing in Ireland, it's their job to use the money that we give them as taxpayers. They get 80 million a year, which they have to promote this sport and to increase attendances. That's one of their remits from the government, is to increase attendances. Dumbing down a Derby Day card is not going to do that on one of our flagship days, in my opinion. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, no, I'd agree 100%. Like, you can see, like, the commercial side of it. It like the Curragh made their decision based on the money coming from the Whirlpool. And look, I'd agree. Maybe horse racing Ireland should be the one stepping in and, putting emphasis. Like you said, this is our flagship flat meeting. Like, the history. There's a lot of kind of talk, all the talk going back the last couple of years. People wanted to change the Derby, change the trip, change other things about it. But like you said, maybe just building up the card around it would bring an awful lot to the meeting. Like, this is getting terrestrial TV coverage, on a day that was filled with sport in Croke Park. The Curragh was being shown on RTE1 to everyone sitting at home watching, which is something that Irish racing doesn't get as much as it used to. When Irish racing was at the races, everyone could flick on and watch whatever racing they want. But now, for the very casual race goer to see it on terrestrial TV, like, you want them to be seeing the best of the best, I suppose, when they can get it. And that's like my thing again. I'm going to come back to it again. I don't see why the Oaks and the Derby are split up into two different weekends. Like, this should be one big carnival of Irish racing, the similar to what they have in Epsom. Just put them in together. Push the Derby back a few weeks if you want. Have all those big 2-year-old races, the Railway Stakes back on the card as well. You have the 2-year-old races that were on the Saturday. You get the horses who could be coming back from Royal Ascot then as well. They've a bit more time to come back, and one at the Curragh. It just makes it more of a spectacle. Look, commercially, very hard for the Curragh to make any other decision than the one they did, I suppose, when that kind of money was on offer. But like you said, this is probably the biggest meeting on the Irish flat racing card, like in terms of history and prestige. And it probably should be built up to be more than just, a money spinner for the World Tour, which is kind of what the Sunday card gave the vibe of. Look, and I'm not trying to be negative at all towards the crowd, because I think they actually did do a great job over the weekend. Like I said, I was there. The atmosphere was brilliant. There was a great buzz around it, but that's kind of starting to come back now, maybe, and maybe more improvements. Like, in fairness, I heard Brian Kavanagh being interviewed on RT, and he seemed open to making tweaks and changes to the weekend to kind of keep on improving again. And I think they've made a good start. Like, this weekend was definitely a good start. Like, the crowds were, I know that the Derby figure was marginally down, but the atmosphere was definitely way above and beyond what I've experienced at the Curragh before. And if they keep trying to improve the card, you're going to attract more people. There's positive reports coming out about the whole thing, and maybe things won't be as negative then. Like, every time anyone seems to talk about the Curragh, it just seems to be negative, and I don't want to build on that at all now, to be fair. But I think there is still improvement to come, but they're on the right track if they can just kind of maybe get that card right and kind of make it a little bit of a festival, I suppose, for racegoers to go to. You'll attract international audiences. Like, you've got the social race goers, like you mentioned, on the Sunday. It'll be an awful lot of that, but then you'll have the real racing fans going as well, and it'll be just a lovely mix and creates a great atmosphere, like we saw over the weekend. But just to build up the crowds more again, and just make it kind of a great spectacle for everyone at home and on the race course, is kind of, I think, what they need to aspire to do eventually. Which, it was a good start, like I said, but there's still definitely changes that need to be made.
What about that, Johnny? About the negativity, which I suppose I'm one of the culprits. I do tend to be negative on some of these things, but I'm only trying to point out what I think is wrong. What about you? Aidan came out and did a couple of interviews on Derby Day, talking about this negativity and thinking we should be all more positive and point out all the good points. And if we can get it all going, well, people will come, they'll have a great time, but you'll be told to come again, more great times. What do you make of all that, John?
Well, like, I'll hopefully go to Daytown for the meeting in September. Like, Daytown is run a load of crap handicaps run on the beach, 6 races, right? It'll still have more people paying in that will pay in for the guineas, right? That's what you're up against. It doesn't matter what horses are running. That's where the flat is at in Ireland. So it is a challenge. I think that the negativity around the Curragh, as much as some of it is merited, I think there's almost this innate negativity in racing, and among the press members, you've been in the press room, Vinny. Like, it's kind of like the cynical old hack thing sets in, and it does kind of take over you a bit. And I'm partial to a bit of it myself, but at the same time, we have to be conscious of what we have. We have exceptional trainers, exceptional jockeys, the best horse in the world. And the Curragh is a fantastic racetrack. It's the only modern racetrack in Ireland. There's no other racetrack that actually looks like it's of its time. And I know it has its flaws, and I know the bookmakers are very disappointed in the betting. There are issues with it. But I love going to the Curragh. I've made this point before. I think the railway station has to come back. It'll make a massive difference. But for the racetracks, and because there was reaction to Leopardstown, my Leopardstown comments last week, I'll say this with the Curragh as well. If you have 20 meetings every year, you should have somebody whose job is to get people to go to each individual meeting. One day you could attract, say, every legal people from the legal profession. That's your day out. Another day, all the local GA teams. Another day, even get people from international applicants. Just get people to go along and see the races. You'll see Aidan O'Brien. Aidan O'Brien will pose for a selfie, which he might even talk about Wootton Bassett. You get so many good things. And I don't want to be negative around it, but I do feel we can't at the same time accept 11,000 for the Derby as anything like a crowd that is way below what it should be. Like, we have to build on this. But the racetracks, for me, they really do need to look at what my job is. For this particular meeting, I want to get 3,000 people in who are enjoying themselves, because, as Emma said, if you go there and there's no one there, that'll stop you going again. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't want to be negative around it, and I enjoy the Curragh, but I do think we really need to build on actually getting people to the race week.
Yeah, well, whatever about the negativity, I think there has to be accountability is the bottom line here. We've got a sport here where taxpayers, such as all three of us, I'm presuming, are putting in 80 million a year into this sport. And we pay for all the administration, all the regulation, and about 60% of the prize money. We also do all the capital development and building new stands and everything else. A lot of the money goes into that as well. So your new Curra wouldn't be there without the three of us and the rest of the people watching this show who are putting their taxpayers' money into it. So there has to be accountability for that money, and it has to be spent properly. That's the bottom line from my side of it. And look, we know it's a great sport. We all love it to bits. That's why we're here on this show, because we love horse racing. That's what it's all about, and everyone watching is the same. But at the same time, you've got to pick out the things that are wrong in it, and there are a lot of things wrong. And to just keep singing, that hymn sheet, oh, it's all wonderful here, and don't look at the bad things, and we'll hide them all under the carpet, and don't let people know about the bad things that are going on. That's not the way to go forward, in my opinion. They need to be able to look at what's being done, why it's being done, and analyze it, and then do it properly. That's my basis of it anyway. All right, we move on to the next big talking point for the show. Is we go away from the Curra altogether. We go to Oisin Murphy, because it came out in the news last week, finally, as it turns out, that he's been charged with drink driving and failing to cooperate with the police after a car crash on April 27th, earlier this year. So basically, early hours of a Sunday morning, he crashed a car into a tree. And what turns out is that in the car with him was a girl, and she was seriously injured on the day. Now, but what gets me here is everyone's on about, you'll see all the stuff. It's all over social media. People, I'm sure, watching this are tired of reading about Oisin Murphy and all the different things. And it's all about his addiction to alcohol and everything else. And he's been done twice before for alcohol and all the rest of the stuff going on. To me, that's not the point of this. The point for me is, what I can't understand is here, on a Sunday morning, he crashes his car and the girl is badly injured. He goes to Windsor races on the Monday, stone cold sober, and rides there. Now, forgetting about whether he'd alcohol on him or not when he crashed the car, if I crashed a car and there was someone badly injured in the car with me, I certainly wouldn't be going off to work the next day. You'd be sitting at their hospital bedside saying a prayer that they'd be all right. It'd be the first thing, regardless of whether it was your fault or not. I can't understand that he did that. I don't know what made him do it. Was it people advising him to do it? Did he decide to do that himself? I don't know. But I definitely think, irrespective of the alcohol side of this, which is obviously a major issue for him, or appears to be at least, I can't understand what he was thinking to go there. What do you make of it, Johnny?
I found this whole, we're talking 2 months here, I found it an utterly unedifying spectacle, where I was aware, as you say, Vinny, the world of racing basically was aware of roughly what had happened in April. This is in April. And I'm the TV on the next day, and racing TV is on, and I think Oisin Murphy had ridden a winner, and I said, what? Well, let's say, what's going on here? And obviously expecting the relevant journalist to ask the question that everyone wanted to ask. So I did a bit of digging. Why is Oisin Murphy giving interviews after he's ridden a winner? Yes, the elephant in the room is completely not even mentioned here. And he, as you say, he's gone racing after this incident in which you had this woman injured. And notwithstanding the fact that he's obviously had issues with alcohol and his rap sheet previously and all the excuses that we had prior to that, everyone, the three of us, we're all flawed. I'm flawed. And I wish Oisin the best in his recovery. But then you do a little bit of digging in relation to what's the story around the media is just listening. There's no mention of this whatsoever. And then you're told, actually, no, there's a very, very good reason for this. There's a very good reason. And that's to do with the fact that there's a good advice from people from the top. You cannot ask about this. Do not ask about this. And this is absolutely coming from his advisors. So this issue was completely ignored. The racing media looks utterly pathetic for a good reason, because there was essentially you just did not ask about this. So I was like, how can you ask Oisin Murphy about a winner a day or two after this has happened, where he's basically not given, he's not cooperated to the extent that he should have with the cops, and there was a woman in the car, and he just kept on riding just for the next 2 months, and no question was asked until it came out. And I'm not even sure if there's a question asked since last week when it finally came out in the press. And he obviously does need to sort his life out, but I'm with you. I thought I couldn't get over this. I just couldn't get over it. And the fact that the media was basically silenced from the whole thing as well.
Well, I know at 8 a.m. on the Monday morning, I got a call from Newmarket, and I knew what had happened, some of the details at least. So if I knew at 8 o'clock on the Monday morning, so did the BHA. They had to know, didn't they? And yet they talk now about when it's become public, with the police making their statement and making him go to court later on this month, or in early next month. He's going to court on this and everything else. So summons was issued. That now they're talking about they were going to hold an inquiry into whether he could still ride or whatever else. They've deemed that he can. But surely they should have made those decisions back then, when they knew that there was this thing hanging over the sport and hanging over him. I don't know. What do you make of it, Emma?
Yeah, look, it's first of all, I suppose thoughts go to the other party who was injured in the crash. Look, Oisin he's obviously had his troubles. I suppose that's been well documented, and he's probably been treated very leniently, I suppose, in his past issues by the VHA. Like he's been given plenty of chances, and God, like you'd hope, like you said, the fact that they allowed him to continue riding is maybe a little bit questionable. I know there was a condition on his license when he came back after his last suspension that he was going to have to remain sober. But I think when applying for his new license, that condition wasn't there anymore. So he's going to be allowed to continue riding. Look, you'd hope that everyone involved will be fine, and but you kind of, I suppose your compassion would kind of start to run thin a small, because he is obviously has his troubles, but he's had plenty of opportunities to get himself sorted out. Like, this isn't his first run in with breaking the rules. And yeah, look, I don't know. There's probably isn't a whole pile more to say on top of what she said about it, but you'd imagine that his punishment this time probably won't be as lenient as what he's had before.
Yeah, well, it could be a criminal punishment this time, so you'd never know what it might entail. Anyway, we'll wait and see. We'll know more next month, I suppose. Right, finally, a horse to follow from last week. I'll start off at one. Owned by Kevin Blake and Nick Luck. B-Set, a 4-year-old filly trained by Joseph O'Brien. Very unlucky in running at the Curragh. Yesterday on Derby Day, got no run in the final 2 furlongs, and it was in the Ragusa Stakes, if you want to look it up. Finished third in the end. It was only beaten a neck and half a length. I'll be shocked if that doesn't win the next day with a clear run. Right, on to you. Emma, do you want to go next?
I'll go next. There was we didn't really talk about the Friday evening race, I suppose, but there's a maiden on that card. I think in the last 9 runnings, Ballydoyle have produced 10 Group 1 winners out of that maiden alone. So it's a fair one to follow, and I'll give Composing from that. She won that maiden, beat Kate Sounion of Dunnacas, reversing the form from when they met at the Curragh on Guineas weekend, and that maiden on Guineas weekend looks fairly hot now. Beautiful was third that day. She went out and won the early stud stakes on Saturday, and Valentina was the winner that day, and she ran a massive race in the Albany at Royal Ascot as well. So Composing, by Root and Bassett out of an Australian mare, the two sires at the moment, I suppose. She's probably definitely one to put in your tracker, because it's a race where Aidan seems to like putting in a real good filly, and the way she won it that day, I'd say she could be definitely one to follow for the rest of the year and going into her 3-year-old season as well.
Great stuff. And what about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm going to go with one of them terrible old handicaps as well, Vinny. The same race as you, that the handicap to beat all handicaps on Sunday, all of these handicaps. And Bassett, obviously, she was well bought, I think, Bassett. I was actually at Sligo when she won. In 7th in the same race was Harbour Wind, one of my 5 dud selections for Racing TV yesterday, and this was one of the better ones. So it was Sam Comas put on the horse because the horse was top weight and Sam's valuable claim. But if you watch the race back, maybe when you put in an inexperienced jockey in a horse in a big handicap, things can go wrong, because this is why I love flat racing so much. Like, jockeyship is so important, and you can get into traffic problems, and this horse had a really nightmare trip, and he obviously this trip was going to be the minimum for him. I thought he was very dangerous off his mark with a 1.4 mile. I'd be all over him the next day, and a nice kind of bit of experience for Sam. Was a very promising rider to learn along the way, but like Bassett, he was definitely a value for a lot more than the results. I should mention as well, Jim Bulger won that race, and it was I'm delighted for Jim, because his brother Liam passed away last week, and I know he was close to Kevin Prendergast as well. So it was a big fill up for Jim to have what's been a rare winner the last couple of years, but a winner on Derby days is great for him, and his old buddy Declan McDonough in play.
Yeah, very good. Well, that's it from us. So do gamble responsibly, particularly if you're going to back any of those when they run the next day. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and like the little like button as well. And thanks for watching, and we'll be back again with something similar next week. Bye for now.